Hello and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you are, however you're listening, you know what to do. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like. If you're on Spotify, we have video Spotify, just me and Joe Rogan. I keep telling everybody that. Make sure to 5-star, right, Greg? That's what I'm saying. It's just literally
Video
just the two of us.
Spotify? I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's just me and Joe Rogan. I don't know how I
Let's
got it.
go.
I talked to somebody and it's working out. So I'm going to keep rolling with it. 5-star
All right, we're gonna
review
have to talk
there.
about that afterwards.
Love it. Yeah, please do. That'll be fun. Or we could talk about it during. Who cares?
Okay.
5-star review on Apple. And I don't know, wherever else you're listening, you know what to do. The important part is today, my incredible guest, I have Greg Larnerd. He's an on-air personality at ESPN Chattanooga 95.3 through Brewer Media. What's I don't know, what do you say every time you sign off? What do you say?
See, I don't really have I guess my sign off thing would be I thank all the guests because I usually have guests on every single
Makes
day.
sense.
And then I say, thank you to the listeners, the callers, the contributors.
Oh no.
Couldn't
Already
do it without y'all, Rich, tuning in or whatever it may be. So that's sort of my sign off. And then I just peace and love. We're out.
Peace and love. I love that. That's fantastic, man. I guess what's the radio station, right? You're listening to 95.3 ESPN Chattanooga. Is there a
Yeah, it's just it used to be 105.1 The Fan, which was kind of cool. 95.3 The Fan doesn't really have the same sort of rolling off the tongue. So it's just you're listening to ESPN 95.3, there's nothing crazy, nothing big about it.
Thought
In
there'd be
terms of
something
a
fun.
slogan or something like that. But yeah, just 95.3 and then of course the word with G, and that's me.
Love it. The word with G. That's fantastic. And yes, Greg, I'm very excited to have you here. Most of those opening questions just kind of make no sense, and it's just fun, right? We're just here for a little back and forth. The
We're
first
gonna have fun
question
this entire time.
That's what I'm talking about. The first question I have for
Yeah, I got you.
everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, Greg, why do you love sports so much?
It's just something that I think was instilled in me from a very young age. I've always been an athlete, playing sports, doing this. It's just been something that's almost been, like I said, ingrained in me from a very young age. I was the firstborn, and I just sort of gravitated towards hanging out with my dad, and he was a big Mets and a Knicks fan, so I just automatically, but unfortunately, the Mets and the Knicks. But my football team, I ended up becoming a Green Bay Packers fan, but the only thing my dad taught me was to dislike the Cowboys back in the early to mid 90s. So yeah, never a bad thing for sure. Either love them or you hate them. And I grew up playing baseball and basketball, and did a little tennis, a little soccer, just anything to stay active and compete. I love the competitive nature of sports, and I knew my goal was always to play sports. I always wanted to be a professional athlete, get paid to play a game. Basically, would have been amazing. But I figured if I couldn't do that, then I wanted to stay around sports in some capacity. But just growing up, just always had the fire and desire and the competitive spirit, and that's really how I got into loving sports. Just watching it. My dad loved it, so you want to be like your dad. So I was always trying to be like that, and always just kind of fell in love with sports.
You'll love to see it. Yeah, LFGM, very much so. My mom, my late grandmother, actually, both big Mets fans. So that's what got me into baseball. That's what got me into being a Mets fan. And
Nice.
man, I
knew I liked you.
Yeah, it sucks though. I hate being a Mets fan. I'm gonna force my kid to do it, but it's really character.
It's a love-hate relationship. The highs, they're few and far between, but they're so freaking high.
Yep.
And then the lows are, most of the time they're pretty bad and they're pretty low. I actually had a professional baseball player on my podcast here last night, and he was telling me I asked him about the Mets because he got drafted by the Braves and played a couple of years with the Braves. And I just asked him, I was like, hey, did you ever have any interaction with anybody on the Mets? I'm being a big baseball guy, Mets guy. I really wanted to know. And he was like, a couple of guys here and there, nothing bad to say about anybody. But he was just kind of like, there's almost like a dark cloud over that organization. There has been for a long time with the Wilpons. And hopefully Steve Cohen can bring in and usher in a new era and just bring a new energy about this team. And sometimes that's how it happens. And I feel like James Dolan is doing the same thing with the Knicks, but just can't wait for him to get out to New York as well.
I might take a couple more minutes for James Dolan, but yeah,
Yeah.
thankfully the Wilpons are gone. And yeah, we can spend Uncle Steve's money now. It's unlimited checkbook.
Yes.
It's been pretty sweet so far. I've been enjoying it. So hopefully we keep moving in that direction. And so I guess like obviously wanting, being like your dad, as you said, watching all the same games, like all that is well and good. Wanting to be an athlete, right? I wanted to play baseball growing up when I was 12. And now look at me, I'm 5'10, 170 soaking wet, 5'10. I'm what, 5'5", 5'7", somewhere around there. I don't really know how tall I am. Soaking
Five
wet,
seven
I'm
on a
100.
good day.
Yeah, on a very good day. Soaking wet,
Yeah.
I'm 170 pounds. So really not doing too much in terms of professional sports. Where did the love of hosting, or where did the love of being on air, talking into a microphone, where do you even accidentally fall into that? Because I feel like that's not even a purposeful thing most of the time.
No, it's sort of different. Well, now it's becoming more prevalent, but like back in the day, in like the mid 2000s, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But going back to my dad, and this is going to be a main theme here throughout our conversation, is that whenever, as I was growing up, he realized my love of sports, and he, like I said, loved sports, and we would always listen to sports talk radio somewhere. It was WFAN every single day. We were in the car together, and back then they had the Knicks on their air, they had the Mets on their air, so like we listened to all the games, listened to Mike and the Mad Dog, Steve Summers, Evan Roberts,
Schmooze.
Joe Beningo. Oh, dude, Smooth is the best. And I'll get into that story about him as well. I have plenty of Smooth stories for you as well, but just getting a chance to listen to all those guys, Adam Shine back in the day. I kind of fell in love with listening to sports as well as watching it. And that's sort of rare for somebody who's, less than a teenager or a teenager, where, kids are playing video games and they don't want to listen to the radio, and CDs were big back then. And then, the MP3 players with the iPods and stuff. And here I am, like just taking an old school radio out to the porch at night and listening to Mets Dodgers on the West Coast at like 11 o'clock on a summer night, like, or going to sleep, with my boombox on, tuned into Steve Summers at night, just falling asleep to the radio. Like, I was that big into sports talk radio from a very young age. And like I said, if I couldn't be an athlete, I always knew that I wanted to do something within sports, but I didn't know if it was going to be sports business, sports marketing, something along those lines. So I just remember one day didn't have my license yet. I think I was like a junior or maybe a sophomore in high school. And my dad was always somebody who's like, hey, think about what you want to do before you get to college. You don't get to college and waste your 4 years trying to figure out what you want to do. At least have an idea of what you want to do when you go to college. So I was always sort of thinking about it. Like I said, business, sports marketing, something like that. And then one day I can remember sitting in the front seat of my dad's car, and we were listening to sports talk radio. And it was like that light bulb moment where the light just went on. Like, I could do this I would love to talk sports for a living. Like, that's what I want to do. And like from that point on, when I was 14, 15 years old, whatever it was, that's what I sort of made it my passion and my dream and my purpose to really chase and really go after. And the next steps were, how do I do that? How do I get there?
Yeah, and right, like it's an awesome story because it's so true, right? Like what kid or what person that loves sports as much as you and I do is like, I think I could do this, right? Like I think I could talk about sports all day. Like it's obviously, as you know, much harder than you probably thought it was or continue to think it is. But at the same time, I'm curious, right? So this is, you're a little older than me, so you're in your early 30s, we'll call it, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, early 30s is accurate. We're not lying to anybody. I'm
Not lying.
32.
Just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. No, but like now it's super easy, right? Like I just download an app. I bought a $40 microphone, and every laptop on planet Earth now has a camera. It's really not that hard to create a podcast. It's actually easy. It's almost too easy. Now everybody, especially during the pandemic, everybody started a podcast. I guess like when you're looking into this at a young age, like how do you start to actually decipher that? Because right, it's really easy now if you want to get into it. Start a YouTube page, start a podcast, start talking into a microphone, figure it out. Back then, this is 2000, what, 2008, 9, 10, somewhere around there. Like none of
It
this
was
stuff
like
was
2006.
Okay, even further,
Yeah, even farther
smartphones
back.
didn't even exist yet, so, like, you
Yeah.
couldn't you couldn't take out your phone and record. How do you even go about figuring out, like, "Okay, well, I guess this is my next step," because it was such a
Yeah.
small industry at the time. As you said, WFAN is iconic, but outside of New York, it's not nearly as big, or at least back then, it wasn't nearly as big as it is now.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And basically, what I did was I got involved with a bunch of my friends in high school were hockey players. And I was close with one of our guidance counselors who was the PA announcer for that. And we had a nice group of friends. There was like probably 20 of us or so, 15 to 20 of us that were like really close in high school. And um, we got a group of us to work like the penalty box. Like one would, on each side would handle the penalty box. There was a couple in the middle that would do stuff, the scoreboard, the pucks or whatever. And I was over there as well. And I got to play DJ. And this is, I'm
Nice.
dating myself so bad because I grabbed that same boom box that I had that I listened to like games and stuff with. I would make a mix CD of like all like the songs that I wanted to play throughout the game or when somebody scored a goal. And I literally just had a couple of CDs. I'd pop them in the boombox. I'd plug the aux cord right into the boombox. And that's how you play music. And so I was the DJ for that. And every once in a while, the guidance counselor would allow me, because he knew my goals and my aspirations, he would allow me to jump on the microphone and do a little PAing. So that's really my first taste of it, where I
Mhm.
got to go on a microphone and talk to an audience. Like that was very, very young. It didn't start with a podcast or anything like that, which, as you alluded to, is very doable now, and everybody under the sun is doing it because it's so easy and it's fun and it's just enjoyable. And podcasts have become so huge, and so that's really how I started before I got to college.
That's awesome. Shout out that guidance counselor for letting you do that,
Yeah,
I
Mr.
guess.
Tolson. Thank you, Jeffrey Tolson. Appreciate you.
Mr. Tolson, appreciate you. We'll make sure to tag him in the show notes somewhere. So I guess, like, with that then, so do you go to you have your dreams, you have your goals, you have your aspirations, you want to start talking on the radio. Again, it's much harder. Did you realize what you were getting yourself into, I guess? Like, was that because you probably just thought, like, shit, I'll go to school and then I'll get a job at, the fan, or I guess maybe ESPN in New York, and we're off to the races. I bet it wasn't quite that easy though, huh?
No, it was quite difficult. And just to kind of I'll jump into college because that's where really
Yeah.
my radio career started. But in high school, I was an athlete and I played basketball. Right, my junior year, I ended up getting cut from the basketball team. Devastating blow. A devastating blow. Like it was terrible. Because I loved, my first love was always basketball more than even baseball, and I ended up playing baseball in college. But you get cut my junior year, and there was all kind of politics involved. Like I wasn't the best, but like I certainly deserved to be on the team. And then junior year for baseball, same things. Politics. I wasn't the best player in the world, but I got cut from high school baseball my junior year as well. And it was just like this watershed moment of it has nothing to do with sports media or my sports radio career, but like it was one of those moments where it was like the chip just sort of grew on my shoulder of like, people are going to tell you you can't do things, or they're going to not allow you to do things because they're in a certain position of power, but you have to find a way to persevere if it's what you really want. And as I got older and I became a senior, I didn't try out for the basketball team again because I just didn't even want to deal with that. I played park and rec basketball, just want to have fun because I loved it. And then I went back and I worked real hard that summer for baseball. I realized, okay, this is going to be my path if I want to play college sports. And played on a summer team, learned a ton about the, hitting and throwing and fielding mechanics. And I was really, really good teacher and a really good coach, Joe Annucci, there in Connecticut. And he was awesome. And I learned more about the game. My dad was always my coach growing up. Again, that my dad coming up as a theme here. And I learned so much about. He gave me a solid foundation of the fundamentals. But then my guy Joe Iannucci just took it to a whole new level in terms of the mechanics of how everything works and why we do what we do. And so I just started to understand baseball at a whole new level, which was awesome for me. And you as a baseball guy, I'm sure you would appreciate it as well. And I tried out again my senior year and didn't make it again. And again, the chip just continued to grow bigger. And that was one thing that I really wanted to try when I went to college, is I really wanted to get an opportunity to play baseball somewhere. as well as do the audio and the radio and broadcast journalism and things like that. So I did a college search with my guidance counselor and came up this place called SUNY Plattsburgh, New York. And I was like, where the F is Plattsburgh? I've never heard of Plattsburgh. And my dad said, he looked it up and he's like, it's way upstate New York. It's near Montreal. It's cold. It snows a lot. I'm like, F that. Like, I want no part of that. It's not where I want to go. He was like, well, look, like I was looking at the roster. It seems like they have a couple of older first basemen. Maybe you get an opportunity there in a year or two. And they have a good audio, radio, broadcasting, thing. So I was like, okay, we'll go check it out. So I contacted the coach. They had me up there with 7 or 8 other families. And we go up there, we tour the campus, we meet with the coaches and whatnot. And so we're in the gym, like the field house, and the field is like back in the woods. So you had to drive there. And the coaches were like, hey, we have room for one parent player combination in our car to drive back to the field. Does anybody want to ride with us? And my dad's hand shot up like a missile. And I'm like, what are you doing? Put your hand down. Are you kidding me? I don't want to we can just drive. But, so they, my dad was the first one. We ended up going with them. I was a little bit embarrassed, but, we got a chance to have a little one-on-one time with them to the field. We get there, we talk about it, we see it, and we drive back a little bit more one-on-one time. And then the next day, I couldn't stay over. They wanted me to stay over for an overnight visit. And this is just a D3 school. It's nothing crazy. I just wanted to keep playing. And so the next day I get my dad gets an email from the assistant coach and says, hey, it was great to meet you. We'd love to have you back for an official visit to stay over, whatever, see what it's like, meet the team and everything. And right off the bat was like, if you choose to attend school here next year, we'd love to have you on the team. Like, we will give you a spot on the team. And I was like, signed, sealed, delivered. I am going to SUNY Plattsburgh. I don't care if it's in the middle of Antarctica. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I wanted to play baseball. I wanted to have that athlete feeling and also wanted to do the broadcast journalism stuff, which, like I said, was really prevalent and very good as well. So that's how I ended up at Plattsburgh. And honestly, like my first year there, I was just I actually had a stress fracture in my back, so I couldn't play my entire fall season. And they still kept me on the team, which was, thank goodness for that and for them, those Saints and Chris Dory and Mike Bergman. But they kept me on the team. And my first year, like I was just dealing with that, trying to get used to new surroundings, school, college, the whole thing, the whole life. So I didn't even jump into radio my first year. I took broadcast journalism classes. That's what my major was coming in. And then my second year, I ended up getting into the radio station. I was like, okay, I'm comfortable now. It's time. Let's get into the radio business, radio side of it. And so I started in with the radio station and, we were doing, one show a week. And it was really just mostly music at first. And I dabbled a little bit talking sports, but it was an uncomfortable thing, like trying to talk on the radio for the first time ever. And, try to, work the board and the levels up and down and things like that. And so it was just quite the crazy experience, just trying to get into it at first. And then it ended up growing. And at that time, like we didn't even have the radio show online. And the only way you could record a show was by grabbing, a cassette tape and putting it in a boombox and then pressing record when your show was about to start. That's how old I am.
Yeah, you see, I told you, early 30s, sure, whatever you say, man. But no, it's sincerity, right? Like it's pretty wild how things have changed so drastically, right? Just to the opportunity that's like, I just want to start a podcast for fun, so I did. And like back then you had to go through the whole thing just to be able to go on the radio for the first time and get yourself on air, which is really cool, but still had the opportunity to do it. Obviously, it worked out pretty well if this has turned into your career. And shout out to those coaches, shout out to that team, shout out to everybody that gave you that opportunity to allow you to continue to do what you love and play baseball, but also give you that opportunity to potentially, get into the radio side of things, which again, you did do, which I think is awesome. And so after college or even during college, I mean, this is your story. I'm not trying to tell it for you, but like where then where are those first internships? Where are those first, like, yeah, it's cool to be on a college radio station, but like I was on a college radio station and I had nothing to do with broadcast journalism. I was just like, this sounds like fun. Let me try it out. So like what are those like next few things that you get to do where it's like, all right, well, this is the, the operation of order, like the order of operations. Like, okay, cool. I went here, I did this. Now what do you go do? What are some of those internship looks like? What do those first jobs look like? Where you're there, you're just like, all right, like I want to be on the radio, but I'm, I don't know, it's the midnight shift and I'm doing this terrible job. Like, what are those like? I want to know the grind.
Okay, yeah. So I started my first internship after I was doing some stuff on college radio for a little while and doing my own show, trying to figure out the mix between music and talking sports and playing baseball and just kind of that whole balance of it all and getting used to it and getting comfortable with it. My first internship was at a radio station in, I believe it was Hartford, Connecticut. I was like ESPN. I don't even remember the numbers of the station. We'll just call it ESPN Hartford or whatever it was at the time. I think it's like Fox Sports now, but it was ESPN at the time. And, I was searching around. It was like I want to say my junior year going into senior year, like that summer, I was doing an internship and it was like 2, maybe 3 days a week. I think it was 2 days a week. I had to drive in from Connecticut. It was about, 40, 50 minutes, drive in and back, both ways. And, you go in there and it was middle of the day. It wasn't like the graveyard shift overnight, anything like that, because they weren't a big station, but they were looking for interns just to help out, with the one live show that they had. There was a program director and then there was an on-air host. That's it. That's all they had. It was afternoon drive. I think it was like 3 to 6 or 2 to 6 or whatever it was. It was this guy, Paul Nanos was his name. And I think he now does, or at least he used to. I'm not sure if he's still at CBS Sports Radio Network or, whatever they are, Odyssey now. They've changed so many times at this point, Entercom to Odyssey. I don't even know what they're calling themselves at this point. But I know he was doing some on-air shifts there, but he was there. He was the host. And then Rich Cook was the producer. And, me and this guy, John Moses, ended up getting hired as the two interns. And we just kind of split days back and forth. And we would come in and we would check in with Rich, the producer, the program director, and we'd just kind of talk about the day, what they were going to be talking about, what we could do. And we'd go into this back little production studio, and grab some sound and cut it up for, him and Paul to use on the radio show. And after that, we'd sit literally in a hallway outside of Rich's office on a computer with a phone, and we could screen calls from out there. And then I would just IM him, Rich, the name and the topic and where they were calling from. And that's kind of what my job was it was cut up audio, go and hang out, sit during the live show, listen to the show, and then just screen calls or look up information if he's struggling with something, if Rich can't find it, if you need help with anything, or go grab some audio if we're looking for something specific. So that's really where I started. It was the summer of 2011, I believe it was. That was the first time that I really got an opportunity to do anything. And then coming back that year, that next year, I did a radio show with one of my good buddies who was in broadcast journalism with me as well. Actually, let me rewind just a second. Before I got to that internship, I actually changed my major from broadcast journalism to audio radio production, I think my second semester junior year. So not advisable to change your major that late, but
sounds pretty late.
Yeah, it was a small adjustment though. So like I had most of the core classes that I needed to graduate with that major, but there were like 3 classes that I didn't have and I needed to take in succession. So I was happy. My dad not so happy that I had to be there an extra semester, which was great because then I didn't have to worry about playing baseball. It was just like, hey, I came back for one semester. I got a chance to be like a regular student and see what that life was like, but still kind of hang around the baseball team without going to the practices and things like that. So to fast forward again now to after that internship, I changed my major. I was taking these classes. One of my buddies, Tom DiCelestino, who actually works behind the scenes at CBS Sports Radio Network now, as well as like a producer, board operator. And I think he works on the Tiki and Tierney show. I'm not sure if he moved over with them to FAN because I think they're on FAN now, if I'm not mistaken. So him and I were doing a show together, and that's really where the Word with G came from, my show name, because we named it The Word with G and Tommy D. That was our name of our show. And we did that for the entire year. I was the sports director at the time for the station, and we did our show once a week. And I was in charge of coordinating shows and the sports lineup. And we had this thing called the sports block. I think it was on like Monday nights or something like that we did. And we'd have all the sports shows back to back to back to back at night. And it was great. And just coordinating all the different broadcasts on the radio station with the baseball team. We did the basketball games, the hockey games. We didn't have a football team. So we did those were our main sports that we did. And just getting an opportunity to broadcast some of those games over the years, basketball, even some hockey, which I'm not a huge hockey guy, but that was big. Obviously, the only thing I didn't get a chance to do was call the baseball games because I was in the dugout most of the time.
Yep.
So, and then randomly I would hit the field every once in a while. I would play, but I was never a full-time starter really, but it was just great to be on the team and be there. But yeah, that was really how it started. And after I ended up, after that year, my senior year, where it was the Word with G and Tommy D, I ended up coming back for an extra semester, and he had done an internship at WFAN. So, him and I were boys, and he didn't get a job from it. But he's like, hey, here's the guy's contact information who does the internship stuff. Tell him you know me, and just put your name in the hat basically, and see if they want to interview you. So they got back to me. I ended up getting an interview at WFAN, and Eddie Scazzeri, who is the board operator for the morning show with Boomer and Giannotti, Greg Giannotti, Gio and Boomer and Gio, I think it's called now. He was Craig, with Boomer and Carton. For a while, and he was the internship coordinator, and interviewed with him, and went well. But I can remember at the end of the interview, he asked me, he's like, so what's your dream job? Like, what do you want to do in this profession, in this career? I said, I want to host my own show. And he got to sit back in his chair, and he's like, yeah, that's kind of what everybody says. Everybody wants to do that. But just letting you know, like, you played college sports, like, just so you know, this is about as difficult as it is from playing college sports to playing professional sports, to get an opportunity to have your own show on a radio station. And I was like, all right, dude, bring it on. Like, I'm ready to go. And I ended up, getting one of the 7 spots as an intern there at WFAN. So, getting a chance to work around Mike Francesa and the Schmoozer and Evan Roberts and Joe Beningo and just all the guys behind the scenes. Like, it was just so cool. Mark Malusis, Tony Page, just so many guys that were there that I grew up listening to. And it was just like, I'm like starstruck right now. But I also don't want to act like a fangirl, and like go up and try to talk to him. But, with the Schmoozer, I couldn't help myself. And he could not have been nicer. So it was great to know him, meet him. And then I sort of hit it at the right time where CBS Sports Radio Network was just becoming a thing. And we shared a floor with them in downtown Manhattan in this one building on Hudson Street. And so they were opening up, and they were kind of splitting people between FAN and CBS Sports Radio Network just to kind of get themselves off the ground. And they wanted more normal people, like regular people on each station. So they took some of those people and put them over on CBS Sports Radio Network. Then they had some openings at FAN, and I just happened to hit it perfectly where they rarely hired interns like right out of the class, and they ended up hiring 3 out of the 7 of us back, and I was one of the people that they asked to come back. And after I graduated, because I was technically still in college, like this was my last semester, so I graduated in May of 2013, and I ended up getting a chance to be an intern there, and was cutting up tape and eventually just got a chance to produce some overnight shows and run the board. And then every once in a while I'd fill in on Joe and Evan's show and during the middays when somebody was out on vacation. And I got a chance to, be the producer for some Yankee games and Devils games and things like that. So that's kind of really how I started. And that internship, my second internship, parlayed right into where I kind of got my start within the industry at the Mecca at WFAN, which I couldn't believe. And sometimes still just talking about it. I remember I literally was brought to tears when they brought me into the studio and asked me if I wanted to accept a part-time position. Cause I'm like, this is the station that got me into sports talk radio, and they want me to work here. Like, this was part of the dream. Now, the dream, obviously, part of the dream is getting back there and hosting my own show on that station, because I'm sure we'll get there. But part of my dream was realized at getting in the door there and working there. It was so cool.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you told that story too, right? Because there's so many steps to it. It wasn't just oh, I got an internship at WFAN. It was, oh, I got this internship here, and then I started my own show. And the guy who I started the show with, he had the internship. So then he told me to put him, he gave me the name of the guy. And there's just so many different connections. It's not as easy as 1, 2, 3. There's so many different things that went into it. And as you said, you're very grateful, you're very lucky, whatever your particular words were, but you clearly worked very hard to then be able to accept that position, right? To be able to say, yes, I want to do that. Now, I'm kind of curious,
And
right?
just one, can I interject real quick?
Absolutely. This is
So
your
one
show.
thing no, it's your show, but I'm just humbled to be here on it. One thing I would just throw into that is that you're right. It did take a lot of hard work, and you really have to, if you do get an opportunity to get an internship like this, you do have to take it seriously. Like, we're talking about getting interns potentially here, and my boss is always preaching like, hey, like, let's make sure this is not a guy who just wants to check a box because he needs some credit or whatnot. Like, if you are going to do it, like, go all in, like, make sure you go above and beyond. And there's a fine line between annoying people and working like way too hard, and like doing what's asked of you in a professional way, not annoying anybody, not being too over the top with anything, and just being sort of professional, like almost act like you've been there before, but also ask questions, be engaging of the people that you're working around, and feel it out. Because there were some guys that I'm like, I worked with, that I'm like, these guys, they're kind of set in their ways. They don't really, they don't really help. They'll help, but they're not going to go out of their way to help. All nice people there that I worked there, but there were some people, and I think this is within any job, that are more willing to help than others. So you got to kind of find those people, and I think identify the people that you need to be like kind of close with. Like, there was this one guy on Sunday mornings, Dove Kramer, that I worked with, that he was kind of a big deal there, and he had a lot of say within things, and he ended up liking me, and he doesn't like a lot of people. And so you got to kind of have to know who you have to schmooze a little bit to get in there. And like you mentioned, with the connections, and just making connections with as many people as you possibly can, and trying to put yourself in the best possible position to be successful, I think is huge.
So, especially right after college, I'm curious, what was it like getting to work those night shifts, getting to work that Sunday morning shift? Like, how difficult is that aspect of it? Because obviously, as you said, everyone wants to have their own show. Everyone wants to do probably drive time afternoon, because I don't understand why anyone wants to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. But like,
Not me.
me neither. How did you deal with that aspect of it, right? You're a young 20-something-year-old guy. You're living in New York City, right? You're outside of New York City, wherever you are. You want to go have a good time, hang out with your friends, see your family occasionally. But this is not the business to do that in, right? So, like, how do you, I guess, cope with that? How do you start to accept that as, this is it? Like, this is it moving forward. There's really not too much free time, because my free time is watching sports, which means you should be working, right? Like, it's kind of that, oh no, like, you love sports so much, the games are on at 7 p.m. Sorry to let you know, Greg. So how did you deal with that, especially coming right out of college?
So yeah, the 3 intern shifts were like 6 a.m. to noon, noon to 6, and then 6 to midnight. Like, those were the 3 shifts that everybody worked. You worked 3 days a week. I was living at home in Connecticut at the time, so I had to commute an hour and 15 or so minutes in, depending on traffic and time of day and whatnot. And I worked, like, I think it was like Tuesday, Thursday. Tuesday was my, I think, like, middle of the day. My Thursday was a night, and then my Sunday was the morning, which was rough on some Saturday nights. Yeah. There was one Saturday I went out after I did like a baseball clinic with the guys that I worked with. I also worked at a batting cage at that time. And yeah, it was a long night. It was a long night. But that's what happens when you're getting good with, one of the more important guys. Cause like, there was not much going on Sunday morning. And that guy who was like really important there could tell I was struggling a little bit. And at that point, him and I were cool. And he knew there wasn't much going on. So he was like, look, there's a reclining chair down the hallway, near the boss's, office or whatever. you can go close your eyes for an hour or so. There's not much going on. So
Nice guy.
that's what happens sometimes when you get in good, and with somebody there that's important. And so yeah, like I was doing the internship, and while I was doing the internship, I didn't even get into this, but I was also out of college, and I'm like, all right, I'm not hosting my college radio show anymore. How do I stay fresh? Like I reached out to Ryan. No, it wasn't Ryan Rucco. Gosh, I don't even remember the guy's name, but he was on ESPN Radio, ESPN New York. I think he was a co-host of Ryan Rucco at one point. His name escapes me, but I reached out to him on LinkedIn, I think it was, and just asked him like, hey, I'm just out of college. Like, I'm trying to get into this industry. I have an internship here. What advice would you give me? And he said, just get reps. Like, just do as much as you can. At this point, it doesn't matter how it sounds. It's just doing it. So while I was doing the internship and then ended up getting the part-time job, it was a lot of recording myself, literally setting up my laptop in my basement because I didn't want to be around anybody. I was a little embarrassed. In my basement, my legal pad full of notes, and I remember literally just turning on Audacity and just talking into my computer for an hour, and I'd record it. I don't even remember where I would put it up, maybe like SoundCloud or something like that, and maybe YouTube, and then like I would just do that and just get reps. Like, it sounded like absolute garbage. Can we swear on this? Can I say?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it sounded like shit. Like, it was bad, but I just needed to keep doing it. So that was a way for me to stay fresh. Now it's obviously much easier and much more prevalent to just, if you're a young person in college and trying to, okay, how do I stay fresh? It's much easier. The equipment's more readily available. Basically what you need. There's YouTube videos galore and articles galore of what you need to start a podcast and things like that. But I didn't have that back then. So I just set up my computer and talked right into my computer. And on top of doing the part-time work, like once I got the job, I had to make some money. So on top of that, I was working at a Honda dealership that was my full-time job. Like, I worked Monday through Friday and sometimes on Saturdays from like 7:00 in the morning till like 5:00 at night. Like, that was my full-time job. And every once in a while, like, I'd get like a part-time shift at FAN. And sometimes, it was an overnight usually it was like a night where it was like, I went right from my Honda job to the city back home and then had to get a couple hours sleep, get up and do it again, you go back to the Honda dealership. And I was a shuttle driver, so I was driving people around to the train station, to their home, picking them up, things like that. I was no kinds of mechanic or salesman. I was just a driver and a glorified janitor, basically. Like, if I wasn't driving people, I'd have to restock shelves and bathrooms and just basically whatever anybody needed, clean, stuff. I was the guy to do it. So it's not all glamorous, even when you're, part-time at WFAN, where you have to commute in, and, I had to make some money and living at home. And, I also worked at a batting cage part-time and giving lessons, doing camps and clinics over the summer. And, I ended up coaching a couple of baseball teams in the spring, summertime, and then in the fall. So my plate was pretty full. And then trying to do the podcast on top of it, like, it was quite the grind of literally trying to juggle all of those things. But always in the back of my mind, obviously I knew I needed to make money and try to save some money. But at the same time, it was, all right, if WFAN calls and they put me on the schedule, that is my top priority. And that eventually ended up costing me my Honda job because I made that too much of a priority. But it was fine. I ended up getting more into that and ended up working out just fine.
I was going to say, you're here now. That's really all that matters. Yeah. Greg, you made it. You're on the show. So really only can go down from here. Sorry to let you know.
That's
but
right.
I guess,
I know.
So I'm kind of curious though, like, how, again, you're super young, right? Like, you're trying to still have a life too, right? And like, knowing that I think it's a lot, and I'll speak for you here a little bit. I think it's a lot easier doing all that because you had the dream job, right? Not quite the dream job, but you're working at the dream station. And I think that makes it so much easier to be like, yeah, this sucks, but like, remember 13-year-old me? If I told 13-year-old me I was working at WFAN, I was hanging out with the schmooze, I would mother F Mike Francesa behind his back in the studio, there's nothing like it, right? There's literally nothing like it. So I think like that
Yeah.
opportunity alone probably makes it so much easier to kind of eat all that crap and just be able to say, you know what, it's fine. Like it's
And
not going to be
you
exactly, and it's
have
not
to
going to be
eat
like this
that. You have to
forever,
eat that
right?
crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. Like, there are only so many John Yastrzemskis in the world that are going to win a contest and automatically get, from Syracuse to WFA and like that. Like, and me and JJ are friends. Like, I like JJ a lot. I didn't like him when I listened to him or when
Yeah.
I didn't know him, which is funny. And I think I told him that drunk one night when we went out. But yeah, he's a great dude. Great dude. And
He's a funny guy.
his situation doesn't happen that much, but I always appreciated him because him and Schmooze and Tony Page were like really the only ones to ever, like, as a producer, get me on and let me come on and talk overnight and stuff like that. So that was fun. And that's, kind of where I got a chance to cut up a little bit on the air. But yeah, you have to grind and you have to take those crappy shifts and you have to, work a bunch of different jobs and do things that you don't want to do eventually to get to where you want to be. And for me, it was, hey, I'm here. And I was there for a couple of years and I ended up picking up another radio job in Connecticut that I worked 2 days a week for literally 3 hours. I made minimum wage, like $7 to $9 an hour, basically. And I had to drive 40 minutes to get to this place. So basically I was almost breaking even, I'm
I
sure,
was going to
with
say
gas
gas and yeah, everything.
and food and whatever it was. And it was like 6 to 9 or 5 to 8 or something like that. It was like a 3 hour, couple, I don't know if it was one show or two shows, but I was just literally producing. It was like a syndicated show, but I just wanted to make a connection and I wanted to be in a radio station and just be there and be around it. And I got the chance to produce a couple of the sports shows, the one sports show that they had. The guy who is the play-by-play guy for the UConn Huskies basketball team and football team, he was the one who hosted the show. And so I got to produce when his producer wasn't there. And so that was cool. But it's just doing anything to get yourself around the business and around the equipment, around what you want to do. And, sticking to the plan, or as the Sixers would say, trust the process, basically, and that's really what you had to do with this instance of getting to where you want to be. Just work these crappy jobs. And I did that for, a year, maybe. I don't even remember how long it was, but it wasn't very long. And it was always thinking ahead of like, okay, how do I set myself apart? What do I do? And that's, again, credit to both my parents, who would always tell me like, hey, you got to try to set yourself apart somehow. And I'll just tell you a quick story without even having you ask me it, but how I did that and how I really sort of set myself apart was I would do my own videos, like on YouTube, like you're talking about, like a YouTube channel and things like that. That was huge. I would literally stack up boxes in my bedroom. I had just like a regular rolly chair like that I'm sitting on now in the corner of my bedroom. And at first it was just like a blank wall behind me, a white wall. And I would literally sit there, something like that. I'd open up a Word doc, type up I love fantasy football or fantasy baseball as well. I would type up like a little spiel that I wanted to do on my shows, like the fantasy sports update or something like that. And like the Word with G fantasy football update, or I don't remember what I called it. It's up there on YouTube somewhere if you want to go track that
Still
down.
lives. That's the cool part about the internet. It's also the terrifying
Yes.
part about the internet, but
It's,
it still
oh my
lives.
gosh, dude. If you go back and you look at some of those videos, you can see how far you've come for sure.
Exactly.
So I used to do that, and they were so bad. And I would progress to I got a couple of Word with G. Oh, it's this side. There we go. Word with G shirts made up. They were just like cotton t-shirts. I hung them in the back. I'd wear it in the video, and that was kind of my background. And I just tried to get better every time I did it. And I finally reached out to the guy who ran or oversaw CBS Sports Radio Network. He was also used to be at FAN. His name was Eric Spitz. And, him and I had a mutual friend, I think, with my parents. And so I kind of used that to sort of make a connection with him. So he would remember who I was, because I was just like a low part-time dude. Like, what does he care about me? And, so I remember messaging or emailing him one time. It was just like, hey, Eric, could we set up a meeting? I just wanted to throw an idea out to you, pitch. I wanted to talk to you about something. And he's like, yeah, sure. Like we set up a time to meet. I had to come in on a day I don't think I was even working. I just like came in to have this meeting with him because it was that important. And my idea was, hey, like we don't do a whole lot of fantasy sports or fantasy talk on WFAN. Like I hear it in other places and on podcasts and stuff, but we don't do a lot of it. And I had like a whole plan written up on a Word doc, and I brought in like samples of my stuff that I have done. And, just thinking if in some crazy world he's like, wow, this is a great idea. Like, we're going to put you on the air. I'm like, yes, that would have been awesome. But I also wasn't naive enough to realize or know that or think that I was going to get on the air like just because of that. But I sat down and I pitched this idea, and he's like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I thought you were going to come in here and ask me, like, how do I get on the air? He's like, I get that all the time. And so it was just like those little things of trying to set yourself apart from somebody else. And I'm going to be honest with you, Mike, I almost didn't take that meeting. I almost emailed him literally while I was going there because I was having such anxiety about this. I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, this isn't going to lead to anything. Like, what am I doing? Like, I had that negative self-talk in my mind, and I almost talked myself out of it. But the more positive side, the angel on my shoulder was like, what do you have to lose? Like, just go and talk to the guy. At the very least, you make a connection. You stand out to him a little bit, and you think a little differently than other people. So I went through with it. I talked it. I pitched it. He's like, yeah, like I like this. This is really cool. But I don't know if there's really an avenue on the air here. He's like, what would be great would be to talk to this guy called, named Adam Bloom. And he was like this, head of sports at CBS Local Digital Media. And he's like, that's like oceanfront property. And this is like 2015, I think it was. He's like, that's oceanfront property. Like it's going to be huge in a couple years. And he was right. It has blossomed into a very, prosperous avenue for sports media people. And talk to him, go meet him. I know they're doing some podcasts there. Talk to him about it. So gave me his contact. I reach out to him. We talk. And, really great guy. Again, I had to go into the city from Connecticut, met up with him at a coffee shop up below his office. And I just went there for the meeting, and it was like half an hour. And I was on my way back to Connecticut. Like, I spent more time traveling than I did actually in the city. And just to kind of pitch him the same idea. And he's like, look, I really like it. We're doing this new podcast on fantasy football. Mark Malusis is hosting with this other guy and like an expert. And they're going to do it. I would love for you to listen and maybe contribute. And if you think there's anything that we can do a little bit better, just email me and let me know. I was like, cool. Like he wants me to sort of be part of it.
Yeah.
And so like fast forward a couple of months later, I listen, I'm doing my thing. I'm contributing and I'm trying to, give him some feedback. And fast forward to like the beginning of the summer of 2015, I see a job opening for CBS Local Digital Media. And it was like this brand new sports talk radio show. It's called CBS Sports Radio Roundup. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like they were looking for one full-time person, 2 part-time people. And I kept in touch with Adam, and I emailed him. I was like, hey, do you have anything to do with this job? And he goes, I'm actually the boss of this job. He's like, have you applied? Like, do you want to get in? I was like, yeah. I already applied. Like, he's like, great. Okay, cool. Send me your resume. I'll go right to HR. I'll make sure you get an interview. Within a couple hours, HR called me. Hey, we want to set up an interview. And he told me to apply for the part-time position. Okay, cool. I'll take it. It's a step, right? And so I interview for the part-time position. I go down there. I meet with literally like 5 different people in 2 hours. I was there for 2 hours doing an interview with a bunch of different people. It was like, it wasn't intimidating, but it was just a lot of people to meet with, more people than I'd ever met in an interview ever before. So I meet with all these people, and I was coaching a summer baseball team at that point. And so I told the HR people about that and whatnot. And we were actually heading to Atlanta, Georgia, to do a tournament like the next week or something like that. So I go in and do the interview. I felt good about it. I figured they would take a couple of weeks to make the decision, whatever, interview people. So I go down to Georgia. We literally went 0-7. We got our shit kicked in. We were so bad. And we come back, and literally the day I got back, we flew in the morning. We were all in the car, like, me, my assistant coach, a couple of, the parents and kids were all in our car because we all drove together. We picked up our car from the airport, and we were heading back to Connecticut. And I get a call from the HR guy as we're like getting our car from in New York. I don't remember if it was LaGuardia or JFK or whatever it was. And it was the HR guy, and he's like, "Hey, Greg, this is so-and-so with CBS Local Digital Media. We went through our interview process. Like, everybody really liked you. We think you'd be like a really good part of the team. But like, did you apply? You applied for the part-time position?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, did we ever talk to you about the full-time spot? I was like, "No, not really." He's like, "I know you do your coaching and you got a lot going on, like, but how would you feel about the full-time spot?" And I was like, "I'd feel great about it." Like, let's go. Like, that's not even what I was thinking was going to happen. And I'm literally 25 at this point, and I just got a full-time job in New York City at CBS Sports Radio, CBS Local Digital Media, for this brand new startup show. And what CBS Sports Radio Roundup was, the concept was red zone channel for radio. We had like 16 different streams across the country, and our job as host, there was me full-time and then two other part-timers. I was middle of the day from 10 to 2. We had a guy from 2 to 6 and a guy from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. And we would do our shifts, and we would literally just take listeners around to the best stuff that was going on CBS Sports Radio's networks from around the country. And we'd ask the hosts or producers or stations to tweet out the guests that they were having. And from there, we could just click a button and we could send you right out to New York City or Detroit or Chicago or Texas or Dallas or Los Angeles or Sacramento, whatever it may have been. It was just like the red zone channel. I was basically playing Scott Hansen on the radio.
Everybody's dream job, right? Scott's got the best job in the world. And that's super cool. I do want to I want to go a couple steps back though to the idea of like the fantasy sports minute or whatever we were calling it. Like, as you said, like, that guy just expected you to come in and say, "How do I get on the air?" Right? Because that's what everyone wants. But the way you do that is by adding value to him. The way you do that is by going to him and saying, "I have this idea. I think this might benefit you. And you kind of know what I want." We don't have to be like, we can kind of be coy about it, but I want to get on air. I'm not just asking you, how do I get on air? I'm showing you that I think I can contribute. I think I can add value in some way, shape, or form, which is something that I always love to talk about when going to classes and everything. It's just asking for something's not going to work. You should always ask, always ask. But also, if you can come ready with something and say like, "Hey, this is how I can help," you added value to that next guy who, was able to get you that second interview. But like, yeah, here's the idea. Excuse me. But I'll also listen in and I'll send you feedback and I'll stay in contact, right? So this is always adding value, which I think is really important. And people don't understand that. Like, they just want to like, "Oh, well, how do I do this?" Like, well, I don't have the magic pill, but like, do a lot of work. As we've been here for almost an hour and you've told us all the things that you've done. Not going to lie, it's not rocket science, but it's an insane amount of hard work. And it's that 1 year that you're putting yourself through absolute hell to get to where you are now, to get to where you will be in a couple of years, which I think is the important part. So I think that's also another great story. So I sincerely appreciate that. So we only have I have some time. I don't want to take up your whole evening.
I'm good, man. We still got plenty to talk about.
Love it. So I guess like now, so you're on air, right? You are an on-air host at this point. Like, that is your first.
Yeah, but it was like, it was the first gig, but it wasn't like I'm running my own show. It was kind of like, "Hey, I'm hosting this, and we're going to showcase other radio shows." Like, I'd get my takeoff every once in a while, and we'd go to breaks and stuff like that. So that was cool. But like, I wasn't like taking calls. I wasn't setting up interviews. I wasn't doing interviews. But at the same time, like, while I was doing this, I was still doing my podcast, and I was still doing digital content and trying to do YouTube stuff and, just think of different stuff to do. Again, it might have been shit, but it was still just getting reps and being comfortable on the camera, like setting your laptop up, on a couple of boxes so it's eye level like I have right now. Literally, I've got two stools stacked on top of each other, so this could be eye level right now. That's just a little behind the scenes insight
I
for you.
appreciate the effort on your end. I'll say that.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we had a cool background
It
too,
looks
like with the
good.
microphones. And I was like, am I gonna just sit with like this wall behind me? I was like, let's get some of the lights going.
Yeah.
Let's get the mics going too, because they
I
just built this little podcast studio for us.
Hell yeah, and I appreciate that, man. Spice it
I
up a
got
little
you.
bit. It's always nice.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when's the first full time, like, you can call it your own? Like, when did you finally get that opportunity to say, like, all right, this was fun. This is actually sounds like a really cool concept too, right? There's interviews going on everywhere. There's games. There's stuff going on. Like, when is that first? Like, all right, well, this was cool. Like, I want to do me now. This is my show where I get to talk about what I want to talk about, not going to see what other people are talking about. Still having fun, but when's that next step?
So I would have stayed there, and I would have done that show for as long as they wanted to do it, probably. But there was a transition period with CBS and Entercom, and CBS was like getting bought out by
Yeah.
Entercom, and that's not a secret. And this guy who created this concept for CBS Sports Radio Roundup, he was let go by the company, and when Entercom kind of came in, back in the day, like before that guy even got let go, they cut our marketing team, like slow. There was a slow trimming back of people within the company, and like without a marketing team, there was no way that our brand new product was going to get off the ground and have success. Like it was having some success early. It was a really cool concept, and I think it probably could work in some capacity, somewhere, some way, somehow still. But you just need the right people behind you to back it up and have the right platform for it to go to. Like I think that would be a cool concept for maybe like Sirius XM, like give you the
Mhm.
best of Sirius XM, like on a channel, like what's going on with the sports talk between NBA, MLB, NFL, Mad Dog. That would be a cool concept to do something like that. Actually, now that I'm talking about that, maybe I
Hey,
pitched that idea.
write that down.
Yeah, don't steal it from me. Trademarking that one. Uh, so so yeah, like I would have done that for a while, but they after a year and a half, like actually after a year, I literally, Mike, was commuting from. Is it Michael or Mike? Do you mind if I call you Mike?
It's
I
both.
didn't even ask. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's both.
Cool. I just want to make sure. I don't want to be disrespectful.
You're perfect.
Because like my mom, I only call me Gregory or G Man. There is no Greg with mom or
Sweet.
dad. Yeah. But she's like, I don't care, with friends, girlfriends, whatever. But like any family member calls me anything other than Gregory or G Man, and there's hell to be paid with
That's
mom.
funny.
Yeah. So I was doing that for about a year. I was literally commuting from Connecticut to New York City every single day. And for those of you who don't know, it is get up super early in the morning, go park at a train station, get on the train, pay $450 a month for a train pass, back and forth. And, take the train, you get to Grand Central, you either grab a subway or you walk to where the station was. And that was literally like 2 hours and 15 minutes each way. So I commuted for damn near 5 hours a day, 4.5 hours a day, Monday through Friday for a year. Like that, people were like, you're insane. How do you do that? And honestly, like that probably led to some neck and some back problems that I had because sleeping on the train and those seats are not the most comfortable. And I was kind of like this and always like falling asleep and passing out there and back. And, but that's how much I wanted it. That's how much I
Mhm.
loved it, that, you have to be willing to make those sacrifices, getting up super early, earlier than you want to get up, and going to do those things. Because this was my dream job. And this was a stone that I needed to step on to get to where I ultimately wanted to be. And so I did that for a year, and then I, was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've saved up enough money. I've lived at home for a while. Like I kind of want to start my life at 26 years old. I want to move out. I want to get my own spot. So, and I want to have less of a commute. So I was originally looking with my buddy who was the better half or the other half of the Word with G and Tommy D, because he was working there full time at CBS Sports Radio Network, and he was looking for a new place. So him and I were looking a little bit in Hoboken. That kind of fell through. And then I ended up looking with a buddy of mine who I worked with, Jake Brown, and we both loved the Mets, and we moved to Astoria. He was a big Astoria guy, so we found a spot in Astoria and moved there. But then, like 6 months later, they canceled the show, and so I'm like, shoot, like I'm unemployed. I'm living in New York City. I just moved here. It hasn't even been a year. It's been 6 months. And now I got to figure it out. Like, and that was really a hard moment for me and a defining moment in my career, my life of like, all right, dude, like you got to figure it out. And it's back to grinding again. You had the good, nice, cushy job. You're making, 50 some odd G's a year, whatever it was. This was really good. But now 2,100, or I don't remember how much my rent was, 2,150 or whatever it was between the two of us, of like, you're living in New York City. Like, we got to figure it out now. And so I ended up getting, just a job at MLB Advanced Media, as a, platform manager or platform monitor, I think it was called, on MLB. And it was basically just like, they have a bunch of different platforms with Fox Sports and MLB and WWE and HBO. And you had to go on there and basically you were assigned specific shows at a certain time. And you have all these devices and you had to just watch them on all different devices. If there was anything wrong, you had to allow, to notify somebody and basically correct the problem before the user figured out there was a problem. And that was just boring. Like,
that sounds super boring. Yeah.
I wanted nothing to do with that. Like, that was like, I'm just happy that I had it. And I was very grateful to those people. I liked the people I worked with, but that wasn't for me. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. And I think people knew that. But I tried my best to work as hard as I could, even though that wasn't what I wanted to do. And then I got a job at CBS Sports Radio Network because I made connection there. I got like one shift a week there, and it was 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. Yeah, it sucked. But again, just trying to get back into the business and get back into the radio station. They didn't need anything at WFAN at the time. I'd already left there. And I knew I kind of wanted to leave there because I felt like I would always sort of be, seen as a behind the scenes guy. And I wanted to be seen as a guy who could host his own show and handle himself doing that. And I wanted to get experience doing that. So that was CBS Sports Radio Roundup is what I wanted to do. And I wanted to get the experience that way. And I also, and this is a tidbit that not a lot of people know, that when I was in Connecticut, I actually took like a 12-week modeling and acting class. And I did that. And I ended up like just trying to find money and just doing some new experiences. I ended up becoming like a background actor. And I was actually a background actor in Ocean's 8.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And so like
I could have saw you then, maybe.
Yeah. No, I was, you can see me literally for a solid like 4 seconds over Sandra Bullock's shoulder. And after like the heist.
There you go.
But no, that was just such a cool experience. Like it allowed me to sort of get outside of my sports jock, my own bubble that I was comfortable with, and do something that I had never done before. Like I was with like 400 plus background actors at the Metropolitan Museum of Art for a week from like 4 p.m. to like 4 a.m. and just got a chance to know these different people. And it was a really sweet experience. I remember the first day I showed up on set, I'm in like all Packers gear, like sports. Everybody else is in nice clothes, all dressed up, talking about how I went to acting school here and I was a background actor on this thing and I did that. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm an athlete, former athlete. And I took one acting class in college because it was an easy A. And that was about it. Here we are. I'm just trying to make some money, do something different. And it was such a fun experience. I'm so happy that I did that. And it sucked that I got let go from that job and they canceled the show, but I'm so grateful looking back on it that it allowed me to do something that kind of helped me get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And, it's just something cool that I can kind of always say that like I was a background actor on this movie, or I got a chance to be on this set and work with these people and just experience a whole different world that I would have never experienced otherwise. And I still have aspirations of wanting to like be in a movie as like a sports guy or like a radio broadcaster or like an athlete or something. Like, I think that would be so fun to not even have like a big part, just like a couple lines here or there. Like I could deliver something. So that's just something I did, in between that job. And, while I was kind of on the shelf doing what I was doing, just trying to get by, I was always looking, around at job boards and trying to make connections. And I was doing my podcast. I was doing a live online show once a week and doing some other podcasts with a buddy of mine. So I was still trying to keep myself fresh and put myself out there a little bit and develop some other brands and do some YouTube stuff. And it allowed me to sort of mess around with that, which was fun. And I always would look on Sportscasters Talent Agency of America. That was like my main go-to. I get the weekly emails. I'd look on their job boards. I would send out more resumes and cover letters that I probably would like to say and didn't hear back from. But then I applied to this one in Lafayette, Louisiana, and really didn't think much of it because it was just another one that I applied to. They pile up and try to write them all down and see what places you apply to and whatnot.
Yeah, what it's like just find and replace with the cover letter. It's like, I've always wanted to go to Louisiana because I think the food is great. Like, I mean, how many different cover letters can you have at that point? Like, it's 100%.
Yeah, and I hope that program directors realize that like you'll get maybe a little bit of a personalized one, but for the most part, it's going to be a copy and paste.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but you try to personalize it and spice it up if you can. So I send that one off, and I don't really think much of it. And I go down to a wedding in North Carolina, and this is a really crazy story. Like, this is one of the things that made me believe that like there is a higher power that is like in control of these things, because it was wild. Like, I went down for one of my freshman year roommate. He was getting married in North Carolina. Just so happened it was in the same town as where my parents have a house, and they now live in North Carolina.
Nice and easy.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll go. I had a +1. I had a girl who I was gonna come with me. That fell through. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm going solo. But I really wanted a +1 because I've been to a couple weddings and never got a +1, because in this industry, like, as you alluded to, like, you're grinding. Like, there's not a lot of time. Like, I knew I was going to be moving around, and I really didn't want to get attached to anybody or anywhere. So this is so funny. Like, I can't believe I'm admitting this on this podcast, but like, I don't know if I've ever admitted this public anywhere, but wow.
I'll clip this for everybody just in case they don't watch the whole thing. I'll clip it so that everyone can see it.
Okay. So I paid for like the Tinder Plus, and I started swiping down in North Carolina where I was going to be. And I connected with a couple of girls, and then like one girl like really stood out. And so I get down there, and I wasn't sure what to expect. Like the Friday before, I think the wedding was on like a Sunday or something like that. And so like the Friday before, like I asked the girls like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? She's like, oh, I'm busy tonight, but like the rest of the weekend, like I'm free. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I'm going to a Myrtle Beach Pelicans game with my dad, and we're just going to hang out. I think we're going to play golf, Saturday during the day. But I was going to say, like, I was going to see if you want to hang out on Saturday. Like, I'm down here, my buddy's getting married, and
casually throw that in.
Yeah, my buddy's getting married, and
Not a big deal.
they're having like a before the wedding party, and they have like an open bar. Like, you should come. She's like, are you sure? I don't want to impose.
Wait, before the wedding party? So you're just talking about like cocktail hour, I guess?
It was like the wedding was on Sunday. This was like a Saturday, like a party.
Okay.
So I invited her to that, and she's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, is that kind of weird? Like, they don't know me. I was like, well, look, like, it's fine. Like, honestly, like, look, I had a +1 and she couldn't make it. So like, you could just pretend to be my +1. So planting the seed a little bit,
Nice.
And so she was like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I'm down for a good time, whatever. And as long as they don't care or kick me out, I was like, no, that'd be fine. So I get there, I'm up, and she texted me. She's like, I'm here. I went down, got her, met her, bring her up, and introduce her to everybody. And we're like drinking, we're having a good time. And like an hour in, she's like, I'm having a really good time. Like, I really enjoy like hanging out with you. I was like, yeah, me too. She's like, I've never been to a wedding. She was like 21 or 22 at the time. She went to school at Dartmouth. Like, she was very smart, and was down in North Carolina for the summer, just doing like an internship or something. And I was like, well, like I said, like, I literally have this +1. It's literally not going to get used. Like, do you want to use it? And so she was like, yeah, sure, why not? And like, we had a great night, hit it off. And then she ended up coming to the wedding with me, and it was just a wild, crazy weekend. Like, one I will like never forget in terms of like things that have happened. And then that Monday after the wedding, we were hanging out at our aunt's house, just at the pool, whatever. Didn't have my phone on me. And then later in the day, I checked the phone and I have a missed call and I have a voicemail from the program director in Louisiana. And so I listened to the voicemail. Hey, this is Scott Prather from ESPN 1420 in Lafayette, Louisiana. Got your resume. Just wanted to talk. I'm not going to be at this number, so don't call this number back, but email me and we'll schedule a time to talk. Okay, cool. So I emailed him right away. I go back to New York, figure out a time to talk. We do the interview with him for like 50 minutes or whatever it was. Goes well. I get on the phone with him and his two bosses. That goes well. And then they're like, all right, we like this kid, but we can't hire him without meeting him. And I found out later, were just about to fly me down to Louisiana so they could meet me and see how it would be. But they're like, that's pretty spendy. I don't know if we want to do that. Is there a way we can do it without doing that? And the corporate office for Town Square Media, which is the media company that owned them, was in Connecticut. So like, hey, like, would you want to meet with this guy? Hey, like, I did the second interview. And before I could even send a follow-up of like, hey, thanks so much. It was great to meet you guys. The GM of the building sent me a message and was like, hey, so good to talk to you. We would love for you to meet with Eric Hellum. He's attached to this email. Works at the corporate office in Connecticut. Would love you to meet with him. He's attached. You guys talk and figure out a time to meet. So I was like, oh, cool. Like, that's great. Yeah, third interview. Okay, cool. They must like me. And so I'm like, oh, let me see who this guy is. Ends up being the vice president of the entire company. I'm like, what in the world? Oh, my God, this is a big deal. I got to nail this. So I go, I meet with him. We meet for like 20, 30 minutes. Really nice guy. And find out, a couple of weeks later that they offer me the job. And I can still remember to this day, like getting the call or the email or whatever it was. And like literally was just in tears of like, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. Like, and the job was a 1 hour show, but it was every single day. It was 6 to 7.
Oh, wow.
Every single day. And I was like, just thrilled to have my own show, daily show, even if it was just an hour. But there was opportunities to fill in on other shows when people were away and broadcasting games and doing things like that. But the whole reason I told you that whole story of the North Carolina and the wedding and things like that is because I mentioned that, my dad and I went to a Myrtle Beach Pelicans game. Do you know what the state bird of Louisiana is?
I think it's a pelican, right?
It's a pelican. How crazy is that the weekend that I go to a Myrtle Beach Pelicans game, that's the weekend I hear about a job in Louisiana. And then before I get offered the interview, like the job, one of my favorite singers or artists, it's Andy Grammer. Do you know what Andy Grammer is?
I think so.
You got to keep your head up. Oh,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that song. Like that's one of his most popular songs. He's one of my favorite artists. I've seen him a bunch of times. And like the week of that I got offered that job, he had a baby and named her Louisiana.
Oh, wow.
Or Louis for short. And so it was just like a crazy coincidence.
Yeah.
The Pelican.
No such thing as coincidence. No such thing as coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah, it was wild. And so like I wholeheartedly believe like everything happens for a reason. There's little signs that you can pick up on that you won't even know until you like look back on. But that was the one for me. And that's where I got my first start. Lafayette, Louisiana, summer of 2017, and 27 years old. And I was heading down to the bayou. I had never been to the state of Louisiana before I moved there. I found an apartment online just because of reviews or whatever. And
there you go, man. So I'm not gonna lie, I thought that girl's dad was gonna be like the VP of the company. Not gonna lie, I thought that's where we were gonna get to. But shout out that girl. I hope she's doing well. But again, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe everything happens for a reason. I think there is a reason that everything happens, though. A little bit of semantics I like to use with that one, but again, all that stuff that just aligns perfectly is just absolutely wild, right? Like that's not supposed to happen, but it does. And like all those things happen and you finally get the opportunity to have that job. You finally get your own show, right? You have all this. So now I'm kind of curious, like you're not from Louisiana, as you said, you've never been to Louisiana. Shout out Raging Cajuns, right? Shout out LSU. The Saints, Like there's
Yep.
like there's like some national brands that I'm sure even up here in New York, like I watch a lot of LSU games, right? I still watch every Saints game that's on TV, right? So all those things. How do you like get ingratiated into a community like that? How do you start to be like, hey, like I'm this guy from the Northeast, but I promise you, I'm going to give you the best hour of sports talk radio in Louisiana that you've ever had in your life. Like, how do you authentically do something like that to really get yourself like, hey guys, no, like we're going to talk about everything that you want to talk about, and I'm going to know it like the back of my hand, and I'm going to tell you why you're wrong, and you're going to tell me, like, how do you do that? Like out of nowhere.
It's not easy. I'll tell you that. It comes with a lot of just paying attention and understanding and research and studying. Like, if I'm being honest with you, like I didn't know the history of like the Saints or the Pelicans or LSU as well as anybody who's ever lived there. And you can't, and I think the biggest thing is you can't fake it.
Mhm.
Like if you try to like fake like you've been a fan your entire life,
Like Brian
they're gonna
Kelly's accent.
smell. Yeah.
You didn't
Yes.
try that? My
No, no, no,
family.
no, 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 no. See, like they can smell bullshit a mile away. Like people, smart sports fans are smart. Like they can smell bullshit a mile away. So my goal going into that was just be me. Like do your research, trust your instincts of hosting a show. Like you've done this before. You may have never done it every single day, and that was a learning curve within itself. But just do your research, study, pay attention to the games that people care about. You may not be able to talk about what happened 50 years ago and how you felt about it and things like that. But, like just sort of be a sponge. And that's something my dad has always taught me, whether it was with sports or anything in life, is when somebody's trying to teach you something, just be a sponge. Or you're trying to learn something, be a sponge. I coach a baseball team now, 10-year-old kids. And I always tell them, hey, look, I may have to tell you guys things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, but try to be a sponge. I'm not speaking for my own health. I'm speaking to try to help you guys. So with me, it was always do your research, pay attention to what's going on and what's relevant within the area, and then try to go to as many events and just talk to people. Like get connected with people within the industry that have been here before, that have been, lifelong Saints fans, and just talk to them. Go out and have a beer, talk about it. Just go out and meet people within the community. I think that's the biggest thing. And, honestly, it was hard moving to a new place. Like meeting girls was easy because you can go on Bumble and Tinder and Hinge and all that stuff. And you can swipe to your finger falls off. But, meeting friends, like guy friends for me, like that was a hard thing to do. And I ended up, becoming best friends with this one kid who worked at the paper. And him and I had a really good relationship where I relied on him a lot when it came to high school football because they had me doing a high school football show there, every Friday night from like 6 to midnight, a scoreboard show. I didn't know how to say half the names of the schools. I didn't know how to pronounce the names of these kids or coaches or anything. And he was a big asset and a big help because he'd only been there like a year or so, but he, was around the area and he knew about it. So that's really what I did just to kind of ingratiate myself within the community. Just be out there and be open, be argumentative, but to a point. Don't be
Yeah.
stupid and try to act like you know more than these people. Because again, they know bullshit when they see it. If you're honest with them and just be like, hey, this is how I see it. And I sort of view it as kind of being a coach of this 10-year-old baseball team where like I'm not a dad. I don't have a kid on the team. Like I don't have a dog in this fight. And again, like with these sports teams that I'm covering now, that I covered in Louisiana, like I don't have this emotional connection to them for my entire life. So I feel like I can be very objective when it comes to these
Mhm.
teams. And I think that I try to use that to my advantage. And you can sort of use that as a point of contention and sort of argue with some of the fans or have
Mhm.
some debate with the fans because they're going to be very irrational sometimes. As a fan,
As
you
a
could be
Mets
a little
fan,
irrational.
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
was
think the
I
Mets are
was
going to win the damn division every year.
no, I think they're gonna be in last place every year. So I guess I need a
See,
little bit
like now
more.
I'm sort
Yeah,
of doing that to try to reverse jinx it,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't do that, but I would. I'll try. I promise you that, Greg. I will try to do that. And so I guess like so you get this amazing opportunity, right? You're doing all these things. You're putting in. You you have your show, but it's for only so many minutes a day, right? But you're putting so much time and effort and energy into all this. How how do you start to say like, all right, well, this is cool, but I mean, my goal is to be on the Fan, right? WFAN. 101.9, right? That's what it is, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so.
WFA.
Yeah.
I think so. I don't know. Whatever it is
Yeah.
here. I kind of can't listen to it too much anymore. Some of those people are just assholes and I just can't stand it. But
660. I always listen
yeah,
to 660. I
okay,
like the
yeah.
AM.
AM. You're going
AM.
old school on me. I
I
appreciate
like
that.
the AM. Yeah.
But how do you like start to say like, all right, like I think I've done everything I can here in Louisiana? Or was it somebody came to you and said, hey, Louisiana's cool, but Chattanooga, that's the place to be? Like, how does that work? Because that's your ultimate goal, right? You're always shooting to get to eventually back to where you started and back to that station where you started, to have that show, to be the Schmooze and Francesa and all these people. But you know that there's multiple steps. It's not going to happen next year, maybe. I mean, I'm crossing my fingers for you. How do you know when's like, all right, I did everything I could here. I've learned everything I can. Let's go. Let's try my luck somewhere else.
Well, I think the goal, if you're a young person within that instance, like I was, have a goal in your mind of like, if you know where you want to be, like I know where I want to be and what I want to do eventually, um, you have to just continue to try to move up. Like you can't, you may love a place. And look, if you find that you're happy and you want to, settle down somewhere in a specific spot, that's great. And if you are happy not getting to where you ultimately wanted to go when you were younger, again, that's fine too. But have an idea in your mind of like, okay, how do I get here? How long do I want to be at each one of these stops before I, continue to move and try to get up to where I want to be? And like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like my employers know it now, like that, like they know I have high goals and high aspirations, and Chattanooga, Tennessee is not the end all be all. Like they're not naive enough to know, and I think Louisiana knew that as well because coming in as like a 27-year-old and hopefully had some good talent and was good and ingratiated himself to the community. I had a goal of like, all right, within 3 to 5 years, like let me establish myself, let me get some good experience, let me do some things. But what really happened for me is something that happened to everybody, and it was the pandemic, where that allowed me to sort of take another step forward at the station. So I was doing the 1 hour show. I did that for like 2.5 years, 2.5, 2 3/4, whatever it was. And then I ended up, the pandemic hit. And just like everybody else, there were no sports going on. There wasn't a lot of business. Things weren't happening. So as a radio station, we're run on revenue ad dollars, and we weren't getting those anymore. So cuts had to happen, and we let go of a good amount of people, and like everybody on our station except for 3 of us. And so there's 3 full-timers that were left. We had a bunch of other part-timers that would just do shows, but we had to cut all of them, and it sucked. It was awful. But I was grateful that I was one of the 3 that got a chance to stay. And from there, my boss took the very morning show because he's got like 3 young kids. He did like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then the other guy did from like 9 to 11 or something like that, or 9 to 12. And then they had another guy who was just like a contract guy who would do a 1 hour show every single day from 2 to 3. And then I got bumped up to do 3 to 6 every day, the afternoon drive during the freaking pandemic when there's shit to talk about.
Who's driving too, right? Everyone was stuck at home for a couple months.
True,
so.
true.
But it's
true,
still
true,
incredible.
True.
That's the best experience, right? That's what everyone shoots for. Drive time.
Yeah, but it was the hardest point in the world's history almost of like the pandemic where sports were shut down. So I had to get in my bag and get really creative to try to figure out how am I going to try to entertain people for 3 hours, because people need some sort of an escape from what's going on in the real world. And there's a lot of on my plate where everybody during the pandemic was staying home, slowing down, didn't have as much to do and things like that. Honestly, Mike, it was the opposite for me. Like I
wrote a book.
been.
I wrote a book during the pandemic, so
Did you?
I totally see where you're coming from.
Nice, congratulations, that's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, you can get it online. It's $1 on Amazon, or just in the show notes. It's free. Anybody can go check it out.
Sweet.
Sorry, didn't mean
definitely
shameless plug on my part, but
do it. This is your show, dude.
Yeah, your show. Stop. Anyway, so drive time 3 hours. Like, did you start doing like movie reviews? How many brackets did you do? Because right, March Madness just got canceled, so I'm sure there was a lot of like my favorite restaurants in Lafayette. Like, here's my 64 person bracket. Like how much of that stuff did you do that just made you just get as creative as possible? Because 3 hours is a long time. There's only so many commercials, right? I'm sure you're like, usually on a regular show, you're like, oh shit, commercials are here. I'm sure during those couple months, you're like, I can't wait. Just got to get to the commercial. Just got to get to the commercial.
Yeah, yeah, it just really depended. Like, I leaned on a bunch of guests, honestly. Like, I did some of my Stone stuff, and like I had people on, and we would do brackets and drafts and stuff like
Yep.
that. Like, I think me and my two friends they were LSU fans. One worked for a TV station, one worked for the newspaper. I had them on, and they were big LSU guys, and we had like an LSU NFL draft. All the guys that were in the league that played at LSU were going to take an X amount of, like, one quarterback, an X amount of wide receivers, running back, tight
And that was
end.
right after the national champ, right? The world ended right after LSU just romped Clemson in the national championship game. So at least you had like some juices, I guess, to go off of. So that's nice. There you go. See, you're smart.
Yeah,
You're creative. You
yeah,
know what you're doing.
trying. I do feel semi responsible for the pandemic, because in my mind before it happened, I said to myself, like, gee, like, sometimes you just, sometimes, Mike, you just feel like in a creative rut sometimes, or you're just like, I kind of doing the same thing. I want to do something different. I want to be more creative. And I thought to myself, like, I need to get more creative. And
Here
then
you go. Yeah, that's funny.
get creative,
Yeah.
bud. There's no sports to
You
talk
want to get
about.
creative? Well, here's your 1 hour. Here's your chance to be as creative as you can. That's funny. Yeah. It's not your
Yeah,
fault though, by the way. I don't think the
I
pandemic was
know.
your fault. We
I
can,
know.
yeah.
I
No, I
just joke
get that
about
though.
that.
That's funny.
So
So that keep going.
another big thing that I did was me and my buddy that was a bullpen catcher with the Raging Cajuns back when they went to the Super Regionals, and they were really good in like 2014. He still lived in town. He's a huge baseball guy, and so I was having him on to talk Raging Cajun baseball once a week. Obviously, when the season got canceled, I was like, I still want to talk baseball with you. I had this book. It was Rob Nier's Big Book of Baseball Lineups, and it was from like 2006 or something like that. So the lineups were outdated by like 14 years. So I was like, Matt, like, let's go through every division and let's try to update these lineups based on like who's been good, who can we replace within these old lineups. So that was another thing that I just got really creative on. And we did that. We did The Last Dance was huge. Like,
Yeah,
that carried us through every
that was
single week
cool.
for however long that was. And yeah, so it was tough. So like I did that for about a year. But at Town Square Media, one of their big things was like you had to write every single day. Like, whenever you had an on-air shift, you had to write 2 articles every day. And then with us doing sports, like when sports came back, like on the weekends, there'd be stuff to write about: the Saints, LSU, Pelicans, the Raging Cajuns. Like, we had to write game stories and things like that because we were the home of the Cajuns. And so, like, just the amount of writing, I'm going to be honest with you, like, I'm more of a talker than a writer. And that is really what burnt me out, was doing as much writing, trying to prep and host a 3-hour radio show, and then writing like 2 interesting articles every single day around that. I had no life, and my stress levels were like through the roof, of like, corporate was coming down on people of like that didn't write 2 articles every time they had an on-air shift. And it got to a point where I was just like, I love Lafayette, I love Louisiana, it's been great to me, but I need something different. Like, this is wearing me thin. Like, and I had a bad breakup like right before the pandemic as well, and I was going through a transition of like, hey, like, let's work on me, let's work on
Mhm.
myself. I started to see a therapist, and like that was huge in my life in terms of personally, professionally. If I didn't go to that therapist, like, I don't think I would have made it through. Not that I would have done something stupid, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
or crazy, but just like, it was such a help to have somebody to talk to every single week and kind of get some things off my chest that I
Mhm.
needed to, and working on myself and things like that. So I learned a lot during that year of doing a drive time slot and having to get creative, and learning about myself through a bad breakup and things that I didn't do right, and things like that, and kind of coming to terms with that and trying to figure that all out personally. and professionally. And, it was a lot, but at the end of the day, I just got really burnt out on honestly just as much writing as I needed. They wanted us to do. And so I was like, it's been about 3.5 years. Like, let me start looking.
3 to 5. That's what you said.
I love where I'm at. If I can't find anything, I'll keep pushing through it. It is what it is. I'll do what I can. And hopefully, like if it was going to come to a point, I was going to have a conversation with my boss, because it was the 2 articles was just killing me, honestly. And so I was like, let me start like casually looking around, and I saw a couple of things that were interesting, and Chattanooga was one of them. I'd heard of Chattanooga but never been there, and fired out a couple resumes to a couple of different places, some real big name spots. The one that I was really trying hard for was there was a spot open on to co-host an afternoon drive show in Charlotte, and my parents live in North Carolina, so I was like, oh, that's like perfect.
That'd be sweet. Yeah.
I tried all that I could to try to get that gig, and it didn't work out. And it just so happened that Chattanooga really wanted me, and I did an interview with the operations manager, then the operations manager, and the GM of the building, and and my boss was out with COVID, so I didn't even really get to interview with him at all. But I did jump on a phone call with him, and he's 33 at this point, and he's a year older than me, and he played baseball in college, big golf guy, and we seemed to mesh. And that was kind of the ceiling moment for me. I was like, all right, like I want to do this. And he would made it clear that like I was his number one choice of guys that he wanted. And so I was like, all right, they gave me a little bit more money, and I wanted somewhere where writing wasn't the onus of everything. And I got that here in Chattanooga, and it's been excellent. It's been a great experience.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, it's such an interesting business, right? Because it's the expectation is you will not be in one spot. Like the expectation is you're going to move around a lot, potentially all over the country, right? I've talked to play-by-play guys, I've talked to other people that are on the radio. Very few of them have been like, yeah, I started here and I ended here. Like, or very few of them, not started here, ended here, started here, stayed here, and ended here. That is just that's not going to happen in most situations. And it sounds like since a young age, you were comfortable and understood that opportunity to eventually get back to that spot, which is up here in the Northeast, sports capital of the world, some might say. Granted, we don't ever win championships anymore, which is a little frustrating, but one of these days,
hopefully the Mets are the next. Yeah.
Jake's gonna get that World Series MVP one day. But
I hope so.
How like, so you know where you want to go, you know where you are now, you understand a little bit of the process now of moving it like once or twice throughout this whole thing. How do you, like, at what point do you say, fuck it, like I'm going back home? Like, how do you like, I don't even know how to ask the question. Like, how do you know that? Like, when do you know to say like, all right, I see there's a spot open at WFAN or ESPN New York or like one of these stations up here. You can go to Philly, talk with those. I hate Philadelphia. How do you?
That would be tough.
Oh, dude, they would eat you alive. You're a really nice guy. I think you're too nice. They'd probably eat
I'm
you
in Braves country right now. It stinks.
Like,
I hate the Braves.
Braves fan. I hate him too, but like I've never heard a mean thing about a Braves fan. Like whatever. Philly fans.
Some of them down here.
That's a good point. All right, touche. Like how do you know when like you can get back there, like start going closer? Like what is that? Like, what's you said you had your 3 to 5 in Louisiana. What's your time? Not now, but like what's your time you want to kind of be back up here, I guess?
Well, I don't. I that's the thing. Like, I don't know if there's like a set timetable. It's got to be timing. Like there's got to be timing and opportunity. They all have to sort of align and mash up at the right time. Like there's at no point I'm going to be like, all right, I got to just move back there. Like, I'd like to be at at WFAN. Like that's one of the dream jobs, is like hosting my own show there on FAN. Like that would be enormous. And I'd be so happy if I could do that. But part of me was like, I wouldn't mind if it was on like a national channel as well, like an ESPN radio or a Sirius XM channel or something in Los Angeles or something like that. Like my goal is to just try to move up market size. We were outside the top 100 with Louisiana. Now we're in the top, 90. I think we're at 89 with Chattanooga or something like that. And then it's just, let's get to, the top 50 with our next move or something like that. Like, let's just continue to try to progress. If there's an opportunity that comes that allows me to jump the line and get right to the top or top 5 or New York or Los Angeles or a national show, like, so be it. But I have no control over that based other than just continue to do what I do, try to make those connections. You always keep your eyes open for anything that, becomes available. But like, I'm really happy where I'm at right now. Like, I love Chattanooga. It's been a great city. It's been a great opportunity here. I host noon to 2. It's a different time slot than I've ever had in the midday. So I had dealt with a really bad back issue that I'd get surgery on in August. Like,
Oh, geez.
so I'm just sort of like coming into my own, it seems like, here, where I'm really happy. And I like the direction that this station's going in. I want to continue to try to help them build to where I know they want to go and they can go. And they've given me plenty of opportunities to grow and build and do some really cool things here. So look, I just moved downtown with my girlfriend. It's the first time I've ever lived downtown or with a girlfriend. And,
There you go.
now I have a girlfriend. So like, that's another, I don't want to say issue, but like
layer. Yeah,
layer.
definitely not an issue. Layer.
No, it's not an issue. It's just a layer to where you go next. Like, does she not want to go to, like, if I get an opportunity in like Cleveland or something, say, like, would she want to go and move to Cleveland? Probably not, like, but we got to do what we got to do when the opportunity arises. And like, she's been very cool about that. Like, yeah, like, I love you. And like, I want to, go with you and move with you and do these things. And I understand your dreams and your aspirations. So it's just a journey. Like, I have no idea where we're going to go next, but I'm just enjoying and trying to enjoy where I'm at and helping this station be as great as it can possibly be, and just continuing to try to hone my skills each and every day, because I'm so grateful that I get a chance to do what I do in craft every single day. And that to me is the biggest thing. And I love the people that I get to talk to here and the teams that we get a chance to cover. Like, it's awesome.
Love what you do. You'll never work a day in your life.
That's right.
It's the best way to think about it. So I've been holding this back. We've been on here for over 90 minutes at this point. I actually hosted a show on Sirius XM for about a year. Sunday nights.
Nice.
I can't remember. It was like 2 hours on Sirius XM. I was on the Fantasy Sports Radio station. Didn't get paid to do it. I did it with a buddy of mine, and I was hands down the most fun. Callers would call in. Not too many people would call in. We'd bust chops. I got to go to the Sirius XM studios. And then the pandemic happened. And so it was like, my first show was the Chiefs Niners Super Bowl. So I worked it was like 3 to 5 that day or something, or 3 to 7. I can't remember. It was like right before the Super Bowl. So I showed up to the Super Bowl party late. It was the coolest thing, right? So I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes and the bets and the fantasy line, all that kind of stuff. And then, like a month later, the world shuts down. I just went to New York City recently, but the last time, I used to go all the time. The last time I was in the city was the day after the world shut down. So it was like that Sunday. There was Saturday where everyone was like, hey, like, stay at home for a couple weeks. And it was that next day I was like, I mean, come on, that's really not that big a deal, right? So I go into the city. The entire place is empty. I accidentally drive through Times Square. I saw 2 people. It was super eerie. But then I went upstairs. I did the last show in the studio, and then I did the rest of them here from my basement in front of this laptop with this microphone. So it's just kind of funny how all that worked out. But yeah, I was on a radio show, and it was so much fun. And I totally get why you love it and why you do it. And I respect the absolute grind out of it and what you've done. So hopefully, let's get you on Sirius. I think you'd be great. National radio.
That would be fun.
Show your stuff.
And that's something that like I could do like on top of this, like on top of the station here. Like, you could do it remotely. I think it would be fun. Like, obviously it would have to be a different day part or something like that, or over the weekends or an overnight or something like that. But yeah, it would be that would be cool to do.
Still something fun to do. Greg, this has been incredible. I sincerely appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing every aspect of it. Really want to find out what happened to that girl you took to the wedding, though. So I don't know if you can give us an update at some point in time. Maybe just shoot me a message on the side. It's fine. I just want to know what she's up to. She was super smart. She was super nice. Okay. She crashed a wedding. I mean, not too many people get the opportunity to crash a wedding in their life, so it's awesome that she did. I know she didn't crash it, but she kind of crashed it. But
yeah,
Greg,
this
is she 100% did. Where can we find you? Where can we follow you online? Where can we find more information about you? Are you still doing some stuff on the side that we can listen to if we're not like super interested in what's going on in Tennessee, like where can we find some more stuff about you online?
So as you see my little picture there, my little thing down below at G_ESPN chat. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm trying to build up the TikTok a little bit here,
Oh,
and
good for you.
yeah, trying to do some little videos and trying to find something there. And we usually post those over to our Instagram, reels, and on Facebook it's at the word with G. If you want to follow along there, I'll post some stuff up there. But like I said, noon to 2 is when we do our live show. If you care at all about Tennessee sports, I do talk national sports as well, and regional stuff, and especially in the NFL season, we'll talk all types of NFL. We'll focus on the Falcons and the Titans, but we talk all kinds of NFL. I love fantasy football. We do multiple fantasy football shows during the week. I've got Lisa Ann coming on with me every single week on Fridays.
Let's go, Lisa Ann. You love to see it.
Yeah, she's been on with me. Her and I are like close. Like she's had me. I've had her on like the last 3 or 4 football seasons. Like it's been cool, kind of developing that relationship and whatnot, and having her on. So you have that noon to 2, ESPNChattanooga.com, the ESPN Chattanooga app. You can download that for free. And I also host a podcast called the Chat It Up podcast. That's CHATT It Up, Chat It Up. It's me and 2 or 3 of my boys, depending upon the day. And, I do my show of, sports talk with a side of guy talk. And the Chat It Up podcast is guy talk with a side of sports talk. Like, nice. We try to focus on just shooting the shit with the boys and just having fun. And we're trying to incorporate some local guests here in the Tennessee area first. Like we just had Corey Guerin, who got drafted by the Braves, played for 7 major league teams. And he came on with us yesterday. Haven't posted that one yet, but that should be up here soon. By the time this drops, I assume it'll be up. And you can listen to that anywhere you get your podcasts. Again, the Chat It Up podcast. And that's some stuff where we'll talk our fun and we'll have some fun. Like we did a favorite movie, baseball movie draft with a couple of my baseball friends that came on the podcast with me. It's just, so we do some fun things, and it's a good time, man.
I love it, man. I'll make sure everything is in the show notes, except the TikTok thing. I'm going to stay out of that, but everything else will be down in the show notes I'm not about TikTok. It weirds me out, man. I'll put your, okay. I was going
to say, just because you're not into TikTok doesn't mean like not everybody else is.
All right. I'll put your link down there. But nobody else is linked. But no, sincerely, Greg, this has been absolutely fantastic. Really, really appreciate you coming on, sharing some of your stories, sharing some insight with the people that are listening, just because it's a grind, man. It's a grind. You're still going through it, right? Like you kind of quote unquote made it, but there's still so much more you get to do. And again, you love what you do. You never work a day in your life. And I'm grateful that you finally got to the point where you can feel like that. And now you can really spread your wings, right? You're a peacock. Just fly. There's nothing wrong with that. So,
hey, look, the Peacocks did well in the NCAA tournament, did they not?
New Jersey, man. Yeah. Right down the road, kind of, from where I am right now. Not too far away. So it's pretty darn cool. But thank you, Greg. Thank you, everyone listening. Thanks for giving me some of your time. It's the only thing we don't get any more of. So I really do appreciate that. But everybody, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you. See you, everybody.